And ask Dawn to lead us in the pledge, please.
It's behind the yellow pole.
I know.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maybe we should move that to this side of the post.
I think it's a little tough behind. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming. I know it's a really busy time, especially for some of our student guests. But this is among our most enjoyable meetings of the whole year, because we really get to hear from the kids that we're hoping to impact by a lot of the choices we make all year. And so to hear from you guys, how that's going from you, is probably among the most valuable feedback we get. And to get some insight into how you found your experience to be and how you find it as you move along to high school. So we get really opportunities to hear from all sorts of very wise folks, and I appreciate you taking time out of a very busy week to join us. I'm going to see if we have any comments from anyone, the public, on items that are not on the agenda. Okay. Any board acknowledgements?
I would like to thank all the effort that went into the retirement party. I heard it went very well. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but thank you all.
You're not retired yet?
No, as a board member, I heard you.
Thanks, Tanya. The people who organized did a great job.
Yes, you did. I would like to thank the retirees. I know we had the opportunity to do that in the party, but there were 13 folks retiring, and I think it amounted to something. I want to say it was 417 or 27 or something like that years of service among these, averaging 33 years of service per these 13 folks. It was absolutely amazing to think of all they've given of themselves for kids and families in our district and for their colleagues. And so it was really a very special occasion. They were honored by their colleagues, which was a really nice format to get voices from their colleagues and their memories of their experiences together. So that was terrific. And then the day continued on as Mark was honored by Essex Chips for his service to kids. And that was a really terrific ceremony. And I'm apologizing for forgetting the name of the actual honor, but it is the gentleman who founded Chips, and that this is
Doug Holland?
Yes, it was the Doug Holland Award. So it is among their biggest acknowledgments for the year, and I had, the privilege of being able to share a little bit of the story of how the mentoring program came to us as a board and to our district, from an informal practice that Mark and some of his staff did to the grant that we sought and received, and then the commitment that's continued on. And quite proud of our superintendent, and felt very fortunate for the commitment that was really being honored in that night. And so it was a really terrific day last Wednesday.
Thursday.
Was it Thursday? Oh my gosh. Okay, it was a great day Thursday. Those are, I want to get those up at our Facebook page. I was going to try and get my hands on some pictures. So we'll get that up there. But and I know that there must be 1,000 other things going on because it's that time of year. But thank you to everybody for taking the time, and congratulations to all that's coming up for all the kids as they're celebrating the end of their year. I know we have graduation at the middle school on Tuesday.
And I just wanted to do a shout out for all the Girls on the Run participants, because when you see pictures online, and what's so amazing about Girls on the Run is it's not only about the girls and learning to run and training for that and having that goal, it's the whole program that goes with it. And I just think it's amazing to see all these girls come together from all different areas of the state, whether in the south or up here, for an amazing run, and the looks of joy and the parents that have supported it and the community members. It's just fabulous, and all the coaches. And I also just want to put out, I know one of my goals in the next few weeks is to get to Indian Brook and do the book walk. But it's our adventurers team that has created the book for the book walk. out there, and so it deals with the history of Essex. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that, and I just want to spread the word that that's there.
And that's the Indian Brook?
It's at Indian Brook. Yep. And so working in conjunction with the Essex Rec Department.
Can I say a few words? Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm the principal here at Founders. I just wanted to say a couple words about, to thank you all for an amazing first year as principal here in Essex Town. This is my third year as a building principal, and the first year that I've been excited at the end of the year and looking forward to the next year, and I think that's a testament to what's going on here in Essex Town. So I just wanted to say that to all of you, so thank you.
Thank you guys. It's quite the team you guys all have, and I think we all appreciate the hard work you put into it. You guys do the work of many more than the handful of you that are doing the work, and we know that, so thank you very much.
The other thing I just want to say is for outgoing PTO board members that have put in a lot of work. There's several members, Krista McIntyre, Kathy McGeary, Jen Foster, and, oh my goodness, Mary Ellen? Why am I blanking on you? Eric, what's Eric's last name? Audette, thank you. I totally blanked. It's the outgoing PTO board members for their service.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very lucky Mary Ellen was here tonight.
Well, there's a lot of exciting things going on, so
Yeah.
thank you. For those that we were able to capture in this moment, but again, for all those that we may have missed because it's that time of year, it's just an exciting time. Dig in and feel fully engaged in every moment at this time of year and eking every bit of life out of every moment at this time of year. So thank you all, again, for taking the time. So if we have no further announcements or acknowledgements, I'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Terrific. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. All right. I alluded as we arrived to our most exciting part of our year really is to hear from students. And I'm going to pass it to Mark because I know you guys have a lot to share with us. And take your time. We look forward to it. Relax, enjoy, ask us questions. And thank you again for joining us.
So, let me set some context for the board and for the audience and guests who are here with our student panelists. This is an ends monitoring report, and we're trying something a little bit different this year. And we're going to do more of this next year. We've talked to the board about doing more direct inspection of actually seeing and hearing from students whose learning is affected by our great teaching. And we've got a number of those students in the audience tonight. So there's going to be a combination of actually seeing and hearing from students, but also listening to building leaders talk about some of the progress that individual students have made, and just think about how that generalizes across all students. We shifted our assessment windows this year, where it's always a work in progress, our local assessment plan, and with feedback from teachers and building leaders, we made some adjustments so that trimester 3 data wall is not, this data are still coming in, so that won't be ready until October with the final annual report. So no need to apologize, it's just what happened this year. So we felt it was a perfect opportunity to just sort of expand upon the direct inspection component of ends monitoring, and we've assembled, I think, some pretty extraordinary students tonight to hear their story. I'd like to start with introducing our freshman from Essex High School. And Ellen, can you just push one up? We're going to listen to students. 3 are here tonight: Julia, Edgar, and Grace. And then a team from the middle school. And then building principals will share some individual journeys of students across the district as a wrap-up. So the next slide, Ellen, is thanks.
Can I interrupt for just one
Yeah.
second, Mark? We didn't introduce ourselves. Is that, maybe we should do
Sure.
that. I know you did as the kids came
Sure.
in. So I'm Kim Gleason. I've got 4 kids, an 8th grader, a 10th grader, a 12th grader, and a daughter who just finished her freshman year in college.
And I'm Rachel, and I have 4 kids also. It's not a requirement, but a freshman, an 8th grader, a 6th grader, and a 2nd grader.
And I'm Cashel Weldon, and I've got a kindergartner and 2nd grader.
I'm Dan Taus. I have a freshman in high school and 5th grader. That's it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm Don, and my son graduated from Essex High School many years ago.
Thank you. I'm sorry to
Thanks,
interrupt. I
Kim.
just
No,
realized.
good point.
How rude.
Once they get on a roll, it's hard to slow down.
It's,
So I had sent, every year we bring to the board in June a group of freshmen who graduated from the high school who can share a little bit about their journey as freshmen and their preparedness based on their education here in Essex Town. So like we've done in the past, I sent to Principal Reardon several questions. Edgar, here's your prompt. There we are. To be thinking about and reflecting on this year in preparation for their remarks this evening. And it's also a time where the board can engage these students and ask questions that may be of additionally of interest to them for tonight. So the questions are here. Take it as it is, and if you want to expand upon those or change direction, that's okay as well. But really it's about how did Essex Town, as a school experience, whether you start as a kindergartner or a 6th grader, prepare you for 9th grade, and share some stories about your readiness for the rigor, if you will, of entering into the high school as 9th graders. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And you've got 15 minutes each. Do you have enough content for that? No. So we'll think
That
about
could be
if you
really
could take
long,
just
yeah.
3 to 5 minutes per student, and then we'll engage the board in some questions on their own. Okay? Who wants to start? Julia, Grace, Edgar.
I can start, I guess. So my career goal as of now is I want to become a lawyer. I'm not really sure which type. And I kind of wanted to become a lawyer because my sister's a federal prosecutor, and she's kind of told me a lot about like her job and what she does, and I just like thought it was interesting. And this year I had computer literacy at the beginning of the year, and our final project was to like research a career that interests us, and so I got to research lawyers and kind of more about like what they do. So yeah, I thought that was helpful. And in middle school, I was on Nova for 7th and 8th grade, and I thought it was really helpful, like kind of what we learned and like the homework that we had and stuff, because I thought that we had a lot, but then I realized like once I got into high school that it was actually really helpful because I was already used to it from being in 8th grade, so it didn't seem like too much freshman year, so I thought that was helpful. And then a recommendation I would have would be to tell middle schoolers kind of more about what the high school is like, because going into it I didn't really know that much about it, and a lot of what I found out was from my brother. So
Brothers are important for that.
yeah, so if I didn't have him, I probably would be even more confused about it, and I would just have wanted to know like where some classes were when I first got there, but I obviously found my way around, and now it seems small, but it seemed really big at first, so that was scary going into it. But
What would what would it look like knowing more about the high school? What sorts of activities or things would you like to hear more about?
well, when I was signing up for classes, I didn't really know which to take or like what they were like, so maybe more about that. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
You mind if I ask a follow-up question just to keep the conversation going? I don't want to lose the thought
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So you might remember that at the end of your 8th grade year, we conducted a survey of things called attributes for lifelong learning, those sort of habits of minds or skills we want to develop in students. For instance, example would be to be able to use your time wisely, to be able to manage your time, and historically, 8th graders have scored lower on that question, saying that they're not as good at managing their time as they think they should be. I'm wondering what, other than homework in Nova, are there things that you had an experience in terms of how do you manage, all the things that you have to do as a student in the middle school or in any grade for that matter?
Well, we had a certain deadline for every thing that we had to do, and they didn't really let us get away with not having it. So I guess we also learned that you have an A and a B day in high school, and they told us to do everything that you were assigned that day on that night so that you could just have it done for when you turn it in, because you can't really get any extra time in high school to do stuff. So I guess that was helpful too.
Anything else before we move on to April?
No.
So, for number one, my dream is to kind of become something to do with movie and producing movies, which I took movie production 1 this year, which is an elective, which is all year, that which I think is awesome, because the teacher is a great guy, and you learn different steps of what you have to do to make a movie, and have to what different shots and stuff that adds all into one movie. And now it's when I watch a movie, it's different than just watching a movie. You think about the shots that they're doing and stuff, which is pretty cool. And so yeah, I want to become something like that, and something to do with movie or writing scripts or something like that, because I really like doing that. And at the end when you're actually watching the movie that you kind of produced, which is pretty cool.
Did you know that about yourself in middle school?
I did not. I just chose electives that I thought were going to be okay, because I really didn't think about really what I was taking. I was all right, electives, let's do something that's going to be fun, But then I got into that and I was I have interest in this. For number two, Essex Town, EMS is a great school, always has been for me, and all the teachers are really cooperative with you, and if you're not doing good, you can go to them and they will help you, and that's the problem. Say what you're in high school, you can still do that, but they're not as open. They're get your work done this time, and that's your chance, And if you don't, you got to redo the class, lose a credit, all that, And that's the good thing about middle school, is because you can keep progressing and learning, but you still have to have that deadline, because then you learn and then go into high school, and then you're okay, now I actually have to do this.
Higher stakes.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
In the middle school, I try to just get all my work done on certain nights. I don't really exactly remember my schedule in the middle school, but A and B days is really nice to have, because you can really think about what you learned, what you were taught that day, and then you can think about it for a day and then go back in, and if you have any questions you can ask then, instead of just having one night to be oh, I have all this other homework too, so I'm just gonna have to get that done. But in the high school you have another day, which helps a lot. And so in the middle school it was kind of good that it wasn't like that, because it was getting you ready and preparing you. So I mean, yeah, it helped, because you just had to get your work done then, the day after and stuff, and so it kind of helped going in, because then you can be a little bit more relaxed. Recommendations: the more homework you have in the middle school, better. I never thought that, but it's true. It's so true.
What do we think about the middle school audience?
Some of us won't be there next year.
Do whatever. No.
But yeah, what I was saying about that, in the high school, you will be pressured into doing stuff, and you will be up late. There's no way you can avoid that. Well, on certain nights. I mean, you will be doing a project here, and then you'll be oh, I have this. And then if you forget about that, you'll go into there, the next day, and you'll forget, and you'll get a 0, and you will not be able to make that up, in which that will hurt your grade, and and that's why you gotta have a planner. You gotta have some kind of a reminder on what you're doing, because if you more zeros in the book, not
A
good.
planner as a person?
No, just like a book or something. Just
Yeah.
every class, write it down what you got, because that really helps. I did that this year for the first year, and it I don't know, it really helped because I could just look back, and be like, oh, I don't really remember what I did in 1-2. Look back, all right, I got this. Find the sheet, you know.
Did any of you use a planner or a tool like that in middle school? Organize your time and goals?
I did a little bit, but not as much as I should have.
Do you still use it now? So, did you use it this? I know Edgar did.
I used it at the beginning of the year, and then I kind of stopped using it. But I would write things that I knew I would forget in my phone, just like in my notes. So, I guess I still kind of had the planning thing.
Thanks, Edgar.
Yep.
Grace?
So in life, I want to go to medical school and become a surgeon, hopefully. And I feel like I got this interest because I had really good science teachers all through middle school. So I had Mr. Biederbeck, who just really wanted things to click with us and just made it really interactive. And then Miss Wolf did a lot of dissections, and that helped me realize I wanted to be a surgeon. And I really liked, we did body systems in 7th grade. And I thought that was really interesting, and I got really into that. And so I just really like the hands-on thing we did with the dissections, and I think that really helped. So, personal attributes. I'm a ballerina and a violinist, and so I really learned that I need to get things done on time and not procrastinate. Because every night I would get back late and realize I still had homework to do that I hadn't gotten done before, and I would always regret it. And it's the same way now. But it definitely was good that last year we had to get it done in one night, so now I can kind of be used to having 2 nights, and it's just easier that way. And you can go in and see teachers the next day, and that really helped for me. And recommendations, I would say middle school, it really helped to have the work and everything, but I think it was too much project-based learning that honestly is not as relevant in high school. We don't do many projects. And the projects that we did do in middle school were a lot of times with mixed students, so you'd have a very motivated kid with a not so motivated kid, and then you'd end up doing more work than you should have just to get the same grade. And I was not comfortable with that situation.
You have that now? I mean, you said in high school you get that?
We had that more in middle school. Now we
Okay.
don't do many projects.
Okay.
And when we do, they're mostly independent.
In high school, in your experience you've only been there 1 year, right? Are there multiple ways to get at the end that you're trying to get at, or is it pretty much, meaning when you go to a math class or a science class, is it pretty much decided by the teacher what it is that you're going to be doing for a learning activity?
Yeah.
So do you feel like in middle school, did you have more of a voice in terms of how you wanted to represent your learning compared to high school, or is it about the same? Or?
Well, it's like, sorry to interrupt that,
No.
Grace, but like, you choose what classes you're going to take. So it's like when you get into that class, they know you chose that class, so they're going to teach you, like, I don't know. It's just like, they're more just like, all right, today we're doing this, and we're getting that done, So it's not like you're expected to do that, not like, can you do this? No, it's like you're doing this and blah, 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 It's a little bit more strict.
Well, it's interesting, not to hijack the conversation, but in 2020, the way we measure student success in high school is going to look vastly different from what we're doing now. And it's going to be less about credits and about taking certain classes. It's more about putting students in the center of their learning and providing more pathways to get to where you want to go. So it's going to look really different in about 4 years from now. By law, it'll have changed. It'll be interesting to see freshmen in 4 years come back and talk about that experience. I think it'll look quite different. Grace, do you have anything else you wanted to offer?
I would say that we always had note cards on our tests, which were very few and far between anyway. I think in high school there's a lot more quizzes and tests, and I had trouble learning how to study for them and prepare, because I never really studied much in middle school, and I did okay with that. And now I kind of need to know what I'm doing and be prepared for these tests.
Do you use more textbooks in high school than you did in middle school?
Yeah, a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's not that much still.
Are you involved with the STEM Academy?
No, I'm not.
No. Just curious.
The art, the AVPA, I don't know if that was, is that
No.
something you looked at?
I think, no, I heard about that, so I don't really remember what it was, though. What was that?
It's,
Visual and Performing Arts.
Yeah,
The
the
Academy of Visual and
Performing Arts. So
Performing.
it's a,
Junior year.
well, they sign up for it as early as the end of the freshman year. It's right where you are now. You can obviously join it later at later times, but it's takes people in sort of a concentration towards the arts and things like that. And then the STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and math, for people who are more in the science realm, surgeon. So those are two interesting projects.
Yep. I guess I would just open it up for the board. If there are any other questions for these three panelists tonight.
I just found it interesting when you mentioned about how you got most of the information from your brother, and I'd be kind of interested in what sorts of things you felt were the best things that he passed on to you, because I think those are the types of things that might be helpful to students who are the first ones in their family going on, and that might be something interesting to.
Lessons by G.
Exactly. You can only tell us the appropriate. No.
Yeah, right. Or what would you tell your little brother? If you have one, or if you don't, what would you tell your little brother or sister? If you don't, what would you say?
Well, he told me, he kind of recommended like what classes I should take and what he liked and like didn't like, and that was helpful. And he showed me around, obviously, and I got lost a lot because I'm really bad with direction, but he like walked me around a lot the first 2 weeks of school, so that was helpful. And I didn't understand the period things either, and like when you would switch for what bell, and so he told me about that.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I kind of had the same thing. Like I have an older brother that's in 10th grade now. He was a freshman last year, and he helped just the same way. Like he would, I don't know. I mean, it's all confusing because there's bells dinging all the time, and you don't know when you're leaving or going. And it's different. Like you might think it's a B day, but then you're like, oh no, this is my A day. Like it's all the first 2 days or first 2 weeks, and then you're okay. That's how long it took for me. I was lost, and I was kind of like, didn't know what I was doing for the first 2 weeks.
Teachers pretty tolerant of that, though. I'm guessing you wouldn't.
Oh
be the
yeah,
first
like
set of kids to
if
not
I
know
was
what
late
you're
a few
doing.
times here and there, and they understand. It's not like it's a.
Yeah, I'm an only child, so I was the first one in my family to ever have to go there. And like no one really knew what we were doing. So I spent a lot of time the days before school started walking around the hallways and just trying to learn where everything was. Because I was really stressed about that. I thought it was going to be a lot more strict than it was about that. I mean, now it is that like we know where we're going and everything. But in the beginning of the year, they were really relaxed about that. But I didn't know they were going to be that way. I thought it was going to be a lot more serious.
I think it's kind of strange. Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's good.
Go for it.
Okay. I just like didn't really know what classes I was taking, or I didn't know much about high school, honestly, going into it. I ended up asking a lot of my friends and stuff like that. I didn't hear very much from guidance in middle school.
Curious, do you think it would have been helpful if a couple of 9th and 10th graders came back to 8th grade and told you guys about it, or would it just been
They
not
did.
real
Yeah, they
enough that
did.
it would have?
We had that.
Yeah.
But I think we just couldn't really comprehend what they were saying. We didn't really know the situation
It's
at
just
that
like
time.
it's. At that time, like I kind of remember what they were doing, but like at that time you were just like, okay, like yeah. But then you get there and it's huge. Like you think it's huge when you first get there, and you're like, there's no way I'm getting through this alive. And then through, and then you think it's just regular. You're just like, okay, like this is small compared to like, but then now I head back like here, like the middle school, and it's just so small. You know, and you like can still, I don't know, it's easy after 2 weeks. And obviously the seniors, when you first show up and you're lost, they help you. Like Brendan, he's a good kid, he helped me a few times. Yeah, so there's a bunch of good kids that'll help you.
Did they do any sort of like, mentor program where they pair up like a sophomore, junior who has similar interests with maybe a 7th or 8th grader to help? Did they do anything like that?
Guide
or?
on classes and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
well, yeah, just like, I'm also interested in being a lawyer, and these are the
Yeah.
classes I've started
Right.
to take, or anything like that. Is there anything?
I don't think so.
They do have like peer helpers
Yeah,
or
peer
something.
helpers.
Kids who go
Mm-hmm.
They just were there. They were in the hallways, and that was actually really helpful because
That
they
was.
showed a lot of people around. But, And then I also I forgot to mention it, but my brother also told me about the internship class, and he internshiped with did like an internship with my sister, and so I like also want to do that junior year, and I just thought that was really cool. And I like all of the things that the high school offers because you get a lot more like choices there, so I liked that.
Yeah, that is nice to like, instead of just like being put in this class and that class, you get to choose what you're interested in. Like in the beginning of the year, I took like this auto class, and I was like, no, after the first like 4 days, I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And so I went to my guidance counselor and we switched it up. So that was nice. Just to like, and then I got into a class that I liked, so.
Choices are important.
So I'm curious, you all said that, more homework in 8th grade turned out to be helpful because you were more ready for high school, as much as they don't want you
I
to.
never said you already made up the best thing.
more homework is good.
Yeah, I actually have, I have less in high school, honestly, besides studying for tests and stuff, but I don't really have that much homework because, well, I have a study hall, so maybe that's why, but I would honestly recommend for all freshmen to have at least one study hall because I got a lot of my work done in study halls, and I think that they're really helpful and kind of take some of the stress off because, yeah, you can get a lot done.
I'm curious, down here in 8th grade or lower, go down as far as you want, other than lots of homework in 8th grade, what do you think was what do you remember from middle school, even Founders, if it goes, however far back you want to take your memory? What do you remember about the K through 8 that stands out? It's like, wow, I'm really glad, or that was a really neat experience. I'm really glad I had that. That was a great teacher. I don't know. Anything in particular that stands out for you guys? The first 9 years of your education.
I remember doing a lot of science labs that really interested me, and it was mostly more in middle school, not in elementary school as much. But we did a lot of that, and that's really how I developed an interest in science.
Yeah, if you said Essex Elementary Science Lab, I would have been surprised.
They do cool stuff.
They do now. They do a lot of science labs now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I thought that Mr. Sennett was a really good teacher.
Miss Kenyon was cool too, definitely.
He made stuff that we learned about really fun, so yeah.
Yeah, Miss Kenyon made it I don't know, we just did more hands-on stuff, which was awesome.
Mr. Biederbeck did a lot of simulations of different things. It was more like earth science that we did with him, which isn't my favorite subject, but he still made it really fun, and it was really helpful to learn it that way.
Can I ask? Are you looking at that question? So, starting up next year, all kids, 7th through 12th grade, are supposed to have personalized learning plans. Have you guys heard of those yet? So you will in the fall. What it does is it allows you to be a really active part of your learning. So can you just quickly think about that, and then think about what classes you might want to take, Julie, knowing that you want to be a lawyer? Do you already have something in mind, or like you talked about the internships, you could add that to your PLP. Or Edgar with the movies, that could be part of your PLP, or Grace with the surgery.
I got really
That could
lucky.
be part of your PLP, so.
I got pretty lucky, actually. Sorry to
Again.
interrupt, but I was taking movie 1 this year, and I signed up for all the movie classes I could, and I got movie 2, and I got EHSPN, so that's awesome.
Yeah,
As a sophomore.
When you're thinking about those PLPs, that could be part of your plan. So you can, hopefully you guys can direct your learning a little more than maybe you've ever.
Yeah, for me, signing up for classes this year, I sat down and I made a 4-year plan of all the classes I was going to take, as far as I could at least. And I'm going to graduate with 7 science credits. I think that's really just going to help me a lot. And it's just helpful to know where I'm going with this now.
And I know you mentioned earlier that you weren't a big fan of project-based learning.
Yeah.
But I think part of your PLPs is think about ways that you can do project-based learning and actually be out of that building and get something at the hospital, get something with doctors or something. I think it'd be really cool for you and as a learner. I think it would really throw you in a whole other direction. Much further than probably sitting in chemistry class. That's my thought.
I was just at the STEM presentation of all the internships projects that they all did, and there were some pretty amazing ones, such as the University Medical Center and things like that, as well as anyway.
Well, any more questions from the board?
Thank you guys so much. I know this is finals week. I know. I left my house with some finals week work going on. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. Because I know as a parent, when my first was headed to the high school going to that information night, I was completely overwhelmed. She was really excited. So did you guys, I guess the one thing, did you feel overwhelmed or did you just feel ready and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm ready to go?
I wasn't like overwhelmed. I was just more of like still kind of confused on like what it was going to be like. It wasn't like I was overwhelmed. Wasn't like I was like I'm ready. I was just like right in the middle. Like I don't really know exactly what I'm like going into.
Did that feel okay to you?
Yeah, that was fine. It wasn't like I was just like, oh God. No, I wasn't. I was just like, all right, let's move on. Let's see what this is like.
I was kind of nervous for it, but I was excited to leave middle school. No offense, but.
That's okay. That's what you're supposed to be.
I definitely I got to high school and I knew where I was going. I wanted to be a surgeon and everything, so I was in that mindset. So I was definitely a little bit scared of like all the older kids and how big it was. I mean, it's not that big now, but it felt like it before. But I was really in a mindset just like I need to be ready for this. I need to get this stuff done.
It sounds like you guys were nowhere near as overwhelmed as I was. I am thrilled to hear that you felt ready to take it on, whatever it was, even if you didn't know. And that's, I think, among the things that we all hope for, that when you guys leave, not only are you so done with middle school, but you're also enthusiastic about even the unknown. And that's pretty cool habits of mind to feel empowered to go and do that. So good for you guys, and congrats on your first year.
Good luck with
Thank
your
you.
exam. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. And if you want to stick around and listen to the 8th graders or
Yeah.
middle schoolers, you're welcome to stay.
Or feel free to take the rest of your night and do what you need to do. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming out. We'll do a transition here.
And in 3 more years, you can be freshmen in college.
Oh my gosh.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
Good night, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have our middle school panel ready to boogie? All right, come on up. You guys want to sit in the chairs?
Come on over.
We'll,
You guys are standing.
we'll
Shall we?
drive through. Do you want us to do the PowerPoint for you?
We're gonna stand.
Or Ms. Holman or somebody?
Let's stand.
Oh yeah, and you
Oh,
guys do
don't
want to be up
stand
there
there.
just so that your back's not
Yeah,
to the cameras.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, maybe
so
we
we're
should-
gonna scoot.
We will scooch wherever you go.
Should we? Do we need anything up there behind them, or should we just put that up for?
Can you see
They
if I
can
don't?
split, that's fine.
Is that good? You guys
Can't
good?
scooch
That
too
works
much.
for you guys? That works for us. It's good for you.
That, I'm in the way.
We can probably even roll the tables back a little.
So, Lindsay, do you want to set some context?
Well, I think I'll let them set the context,
Okay.
and then.
Right back there. Okay. I'll let them set the context, and then I can fill in,
Okay.
Can you see
and some of the gaps later on.
Okay, so we are 5 8th graders and a 7th grader from.
And one 7th grader.
From the Edge Academy team at EMS, right across the road. And we're here today to present to you about a program called Idle Free Vermont. And its main objective in its existence is to help lower the amount of idling in school parking lots and in Vermont. My name is Mary Ellen Demko, and I'm an 8th grader.
I'm Brittany Como, and I'm an 8th grader also. I'm Monica Clark, I'm an 8th grader.
I'm Isabel Seguin, I'm an 8th grader.
I'm Ben Springer, I'm a 7th grader. I'm Ramona Belladio, I'm an 8th grader. Did you know that idling vehicle exhaust contributes to Vermont's elevated asthma rate? And 10 seconds of idling wastes more fuel than shutting off the engine and then restarting it. And 10 minutes of idling daily can cost $65 to $200 annually, depending on the engine size. And idling vehicle exhaust contributes to climate change and dependence on oil.
And so there was a law made on May 1st of 2014 for idling, and this law is that any motor vehicle cannot idle for more than 5 minutes in any 60-minute period while the vehicle is stationary, and any violation is considered breaking the law.
So it all kind of began last year, as a lot of you here probably know. The Edge Academy team, we actually work from project-based learning, which means that we have a project block, we have a project block every year, and it's every day. And last year, one of our projects was actually, we decided, okay, let's help our school be more green and eco-friendly, and so a small group of us, mainly 8th graders, actually, helped. We decided, okay, let's do idling, something with that, and so then Lindsay Holman helped us find the program Idle Free Vermont, which is what this is about, and we ended up contacting Wayne Michaud, and he came and gave us a really nice presentation and some tips on what we can do. And he said, well, you can't get too much into this because it's the end of the year. It was in the second semester that we were doing this. And so it kind of all went down this year, all the interesting stuff.
So at first, they started with researching about the impact of idling, and they also researched about the newly passed law, which was passed on May 1st, 2014, which you previously heard about. And afterwards, they gave a presentation to Mr. Andrews to get permission to move forward with the Idle Free campaign in the spring of 2014. So for data collection, firstly, we did some data collection during pickup time at the end of the school day, even though we noticed that at drop-off time there were a lot of people idling, and there's usually this huge line on the curb. It's really bad. You don't want to pass there.
We're very far back on some days.
And yeah, it goes all the way down Founders Road. So we did this some data collection in October and in May. And the average temperature for both months were about similar during both collections. And we observed that cars in the drop-off/pickup lane and the visitor parking area, which is near the prairie field where you enter into the prairie field. And the way we recorded it was that we had like this data sheet, and it said like yes or no, whether or not they're idling. And then you had to write down the start time and then the end time, and they actually left.
So for our fall data collection, it was conducted for 5 days, school afternoon dismissal, like Isabel explained, and our average temperature was around 55 degrees.
The total vehicles observed were 111. Total vehicles idling were 60%. The total minutes of idling were 426, which is like 7.10 hours, which is 5.68 hours for 4 days.
The amount of fuel consumed was 3.05 gallons for 5 days, and 0.61 gallons per day average. Amount of fuel consumed annually, this is just an estimation, based on in a 100-day school year, or 180-day school year, is 110 gallons. And amount of CO2 emissions annually estimation, based on 100-day school year, 2,156 pounds, or 1.08 tons.
Excuse me.
So this year we also, what we did at the end of the year in the spring, is we went out, after our collection, we went out to the community and we told them about our information and things like this, but we also put up some signage. So you can see here, there's a sign on our pickup/drop-off lane, and so it tells you about idling and the law and no idling, and also the ETS. There's an ETSD PTO news letter or an e-blast sent out about this, and then which is weekly, and then a campaign information and EMS parent newsletter. So there's a parent newsletter that goes out every week, and this was on the newsletter.
And some of the campaign details were included in our EMS Whole School Energy Challenge report. Now, if you don't know what that is, Whole School Energy Challenge is our basic. It was one of our projects for the Edge last year. We basically it was just basically an initiative to lower our school's energy consumption by 10%, and it's statewide that this is done. So we managed to get it down to 13%, and we're just continuing this. So this is just an effort to make our school greener.
Sorry. Okay. It's okay if we can't.
Okay.
Later.
Anyway.
Yeah, so basically we have a quarterly report that Annika just explained with the Whole School Energy Challenge, which was also an EDGE project, and we're in our third year. Did you already say that? Because I was fiddling.
Well, I just explained Whole School Energy Challenge.
And so we are already at 13% reduction, which I think you explained as well. So this was kind of a next step in our whole project. Sorry, I'm in charge of that.
We also did something called the driver contact event, and what we did is we went up to cars that were in the pickup lane, because this was in the afternoon that we were doing this. So we went to the cars and we observed. We were doing some kind of observing too. But what we did is we would go up to the cars and we would see if they were idling or if they were not. Usually, sometimes the person would just turn off their key once they saw us. Oh no! So we would go up to the cars and we would greet them, and we had a script with us.
So our script was practically like, we had two parts. There was, if the person was idling, if they weren't idling. So if they weren't idling, we'd be like, thank you for not idling. If they were idling, we'd be like, excuse me, turn the key off, please. We wouldn't say that literally. We'd be like, would you like to learn about some idling? And we'd be like, okay, we could use your... It's like it would only take a moment of their time, and most of them were waiting for like 30 minutes, so they have a lot of time. And so we'd tell them a little bit about it. It was like 110 gallons per year or something. We'd tell them some information, and then we'd pass out these flyers, and then at the end we'd be like, oh, do you want a sticker to remind yourself not to idle? And they'd be like, most of them were like, sure, and they just put it on their top. They didn't even know how to stick it on the window, so sometimes I had to show them. And I specifically noticed that I was there for three of the days. Compared to the first day and the second day, there were a lot more dogs, and they specifically said, one of the drivers said, I asked them if they were trying to bribe us with pets. And they said, yes, we're trying to distract you with our pets, and I'm just like, well, it's working.
After you talked to them, did they shut their cars off?
Usually they
yeah.
did before.
Yeah.
So some of them kept them on, and I was just like giving them the glare.
Yeah, like usually some of them when we walked up, they would turn off the cars because we also did this in the fall, and they were kind of. I could see they're kind of suspicious, and I could see the look in their eyes. It was like, "Oh, you're the kids who were standing out in the freezing cold in October." Right, with that weird kind of CO2 measure. I wasn't sure what that was, but I know it was you guys. So, but usually after we told them about it, they would turn off the key and they would be very nice to us, and they would mostly take the sticker, and then sometimes take the flyer, and then they would usually hear the facts.
Great. So, we did another data collection at the end of the year, or near the end of the year. We did it in May, just to see if we made any impact, and turns out we actually may have. So we did almost the same exact thing, recorded it for 4 days, school afternoon dismissal, and the average temperature was 65 degrees.
The total vehicles observed were 75. Total vehicles idling were 39, just 52%, bringing it down 8%. Total minutes of idling were 183 minutes, which is equal to 3 hours-ish.
The amount of fuel consumed was 1.31 gallons per 4 days, and 0.33 gallons per day, average.
The amount of fuel consumed annually, this is just an estimation, by the way, based on 180-day school year was 59 gallons.
And the amount of CO2 emissions estimation was based on a 180-day school year, 1,159 pounds, or 0.58 tons.
Which is cutting it in half. So the total idling time over 4 days changed from 5.68 hours to 3.5 hours, and there were actually less cars in the spring than there were in the fall. And when comparing the data from the fall to the spring, we noticed that the total amount of times when idling had dropped by 46%, and 25% reduction in idling over the course of the whole year. And over a 180-day school year, AMS potentially achieved a 15-gallon reduction in fuel consumption. And this means that we were on track to keeping idling even further, reducing it.
Okay, so we're giving you a bunch of this information about idling, how it's so terrible for the environment. But with the impact, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, like it's kind of what we did, but a lot of people don't really know what idling does and how it has like a real impact on people. So this might be a bit personal, but like I have asthma. I've had asthma attacks before. Yeah. And I think that a lot of it could have come from the amount of idling in the schools, like at the schools and everything, and going to functions and doing sports and things like that. And so it really does kind of hit close, and it's a lot of why I wanted to do this project last year and why I wish that I could have done it this year again. And it's a lot of the reason why I'm doing it now. So if you need a real example of why to not idle, just think like kids in your own school district where your children might go or might have gone or are currently going to. Like it has a big impact there. Like there are a lot of people who have asthma or other lung disorders and things that can be caused by idling. Then.
One thing is we could add details about idle-free procedures to the ETSD parent handbook. Another thing is that we can consider parking lot changes, but this should be a big thing because we have like this very big line and our parking lot's very big. And then the third one is bus riding. We have a lot of buses that come through 2 times a day, at 2:30 and starting at 3:15. And a lot of kids don't ride the bus. For example, my bus, we go through pretty big neighborhood. We go near where Indian Brook is, over in that area by the Essex Alliance Church. There's only 6 kids usually who ride my bus. And it's kind of weird because our bus goes over a big variety, and then we have the high schoolers that come on. But for middle schoolers, for my bus, we usually only have 6 people who ride our bus. And so we have, all of our students are able to ride a bus. So there would be really, there would be great if all kids could ride the bus. But of course there's other things like sports events and recitals and some concerts and sports and things like that, and doctor's appointments.
Yeah, like all the kind of regular stuff, like, oh, you have an appointment at 2 o'clock. You don't have to ride the bus. I'm picking you up from school.
Yeah.
There's the whole, oh, you have a track meet. You're going to take a bus over to EHS with the whole team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And it's because usually there's only one kid in one car. And then with the bus, with a lot of the kids rode the bus, it'd be like 20 kids or something like that in one bus. And that even the buses are bigger and kids might not like riding the bus. They usually don't. They can still ride the bus and they get home. Maybe it might be 20-minute difference, but it would still definitely save the environment.
I'm just going to jump in here. I added just a little teacher slide just so I can explain some of the thinking behind it from a teacher's perspective. So, well, first of all, just to add on to what they just said, we didn't even get to the idling that occurs around pickup with sports. And because that's not during the school day, we just measured, like, basically we went outside around like 2:10. Some cars had already been sitting there for a while. You know, 2:10 to 2:35, cars are still sitting there with the cars on. So that's, we haven't even looked beyond. And I think, and the kids know very well that there are cars that sit out there for a long time. So that was just another interesting question that got brought up, like, what do we do about that? But from a teacher perspective, it's interesting to have come in right off of the tail end of the high schoolers when they talked about project-based learning. And I think that their definition of project-based learning is a little misinformed. This is really project-based learning. This is a project that stemmed from the kids' interests. It's a project where the subject lines are really blurred. There was data collection, there was, measuring, we use a CO2 sensor, and there was, communication, written communication, there was science involved. So it wasn't like we defined it by a subject. The subject lines really were blurred. Project-based learning is when you identify an issue or have a question, and then you take the steps necessary to address that question or find out more about it. And that's what these guys did. On our team last year. They noticed that there was a lot of idling. We leave the building often because we're going out into the community, and we often see people sitting there in the parking lot, and we're always like, that's interesting. Like what can be done about that? So kids brought the question to us, and there happened to be a great organization that was working with it and had received a grant this year for 5 schools to go through this process. I think CVU is one of them, I believe, and a few other schools around the area. I can't remember off the top of my head. And so what we do with our projects is we always look at the ends policies and align our project work with the ends policies. And so when I was thinking about from a teacher's perspective, this is about, a student-initiated, inquiry-based project. It's meaningful, it's relevant to them. It has impact on not only their small community, but the larger community. It's encouraging positive change within our community. I really like this idea of civic literacy, that they're able to initiate change in their community and they are initiating change. We can see the results in the data, and hopefully, we can take it another step further, and that's why they're here tonight to talk with you. But all the pieces in red were kind of like, as I was going through, I was like, check, check, check. These were all the pieces, and then some. And so for a teacher's perspective, this is what drives our projects on the Edge Academy team, and that's what a truly project-based learning model is. I think sometimes we get misled about projects being kind of like you research something and then you make a PowerPoint or you do a poster. This is a different type of project.
Questions? I have a question. When you were out in your parking lot, did you also monitor your school buses, so you recommended people ride the bus?
The buses actually have an obligation not to idle, because there actually was this bus driver who he was on the side.
We got to know him
and
very
you saw
well.
him in one of the photos, and he would always like come down and talk to us, but he would always make sure that the bus was off the entire time. He's obligated to have a rule.
That's right. It's
saying
the law.
that
It was
while
the
they're
first
waiting,
law passed.
Yes.
No, it was before the law passed. If they had a rule that
What was the
they would
first-
have to turn, they had to turn it off, and then maybe like 5 to 10 minutes beforehand, they'll turn it off just to warm up the bus because it takes a really long time.
So I'm
In the
just
cold
curious
weather.
so that was one driver. I didn't know if you monitored them all, was my curiosity. Because originally the anti-idling law was based from the kids at Browns River Middle School who went after school buses for idling in their yard. And they followed it all the way through to Montpelier and got the law passed that school buses couldn't idle in a schoolyard.
Well, the buses, we can tell the difference between a car engine and a bus engine.
And smell.
So we didn't, that wasn't one of our main components, like, okay, check the buses. We were really focused on the cars, because that's like one of the things we know that the cars are going to idle. But from our perspective and from my perspective, I didn't hear any buses, and it's usually the buses are very close. We usually have that kind of loop around, and they're usually very close, and we usually don't hear them. And when I go to the bus, we don't hear the buses. They always turn off their buses. So
Yeah, I was just going to add, Ben, that we got to talking with the bus drivers very frequently during this whole year because they were curious about what we were doing, and we had many conversations, and definitely the buses were off. I know only in the winter time in extreme cold, but the times when we were collecting data in the fall and the spring, they were off. But the bus driver that we were talking to often, because he parks right on the side there, he was, really concerned about the decrease in ridership on the buses. And he sees the cars pulling up every day, so another perspective of, the idling situation.
I want to add to what Isabel said about the buses idling and stuff. I know I've been on a bus that has been idling, and through the radio, there was someone who told the bus driver to turn off the engine because it was idling. So whoever's in the bus barn at that time who's getting all the calls, they tell the bus if they notice that it is running.
That's good.
And another thing to add to what Ben was saying and to your question, the buses, we kind of know there's the same amount of buses pretty much every day unless one's late coming, but it's pretty much the same 12, 13 buses every day. But with cars, it's kind of like a shifting thing. You never know, who has an appointment, who just doesn't even want to ride the bus, or just doesn't even want to consider it. No. Long ride.
Because we don't know because we have also with First In, some of the buses also go to high school. So we don't know if those are idling. So we can't make a firm answer are all of our buses idling or not. So because the buses, they go to high school, we never know what we're doing because we're across the town and they're all the way over there, and it's pretty hard to know what they're doing.
Well, as long as they're complying with the law when they're in your yard, that's what you're really concerned about.
But they usually, and most of the time, I haven't experienced any bus idling that I know of. So they they turn off the feed.
But we have one more presentation, so I wonder if the board has any more questions for this great panel of.
That was very good, guys. You did a really nice job.
Great
We do have extra flyers if anyone wants some.
And I passed out just a copy of a procedure that Wayne had shared that's just a sample procedure that could potentially be adopted, some of the language for the handbook or something to consider further. I mean, there's 3 signs out there right now. I don't know what the solution is, but it's, you know, we had a reduction. I think when we went out there certainly people turned off their cars. They were like, you know, as soon as they saw me walking out, they turned it on. Actually, in May, the kids kind of hid behind trees, too, so that they really could get good data.
So you did it naturally.
The bleachers, right. We had, like, our little hiding spots, but I think it's something that needs maybe some further exploration. So.
And I think it's great to have the signs because I know whenever I pull up, and I am one of those afternoon occasional pickups, it's great to have that reminder, and it just is fabulous. So.
Well, thanks for coming out on a school night.
Thank you guys
Good to
so
stay
much.
tomorrow.
It was a lot of work.
Thanks.
Nice job.
Good job.
Thank you.
Next year you can monitor things.
Exactly. They do.
You can compare notes.
Or EES in the morning.
Right.
But you know, it's different because the founders in EES pickup you have to go in so everybody shuts off their cars versus here at EMS where
It is amazing to see that line of cars though come in the morning.
people are dropping off on
never
their
have to
way.
do it, but if Abby misses the bus,
I can do it if you want.
Well, or if we have an early
mind if I-
meeting
I
for
prompt
some
you?
reason.
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I actually had to drop Lauren off to high school recently, and I was like, I will never do that again. It's
Oh, particularly
insane.
with the construction.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, that's
That's
just off the chart.
That's just horrible
It's
right
only
now.
the times when Zach
You
has
want to
jazz
turn your
and
car
has to
off
be there
there
before the
sitting
bus gets
in the road.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there forever.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Well, I learned
Yes.
something.
Thank
I
you.
think
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
great.
Wayne has been communicating with me for a couple of years, and he's very clear about what needs to happen
Pretty
at the
gun-ho
local
guy.
level. And I don't go as far as he goes. He really believes we have to have school board policy, and what I did commit to is that we can look at procedures and make sure we run a campaign of not just in the handbook, but continuing to remind folks through email blast. But these students just nailed it. I mean,
They're great.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good.
Cool.
Well,
So is the procedure in the handbook?
it's
something
going.
that
We're
you're-
going to do it this
something-
summer.
Some version of
I
it.
committed
you're
to it for
planning.
next year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Are there
Well-
signs at the elementary school?
I don't think so. They're just at the middle school. Maybe
I mean, I know we don't
idle
idle as
They're not
much
really
there.
there long
No,
enough to
it's
idle.
true, I guess.
Like, well, then
Right.
Yeah,
Rush
there's
us
the
along.
occasional morning when they're
Rock and roll.
you're wrapped around. It's like, no, I'm parking. I'm walking in.
Yeah.
Well, the third component to use Ben's word, they're just so articulate, weren't they? Just,
Yeah.
Yeah. The
They
third
knew their stuff.
The third component of tonight's presentation involves several of us, namely Peter, Kevin, and Wendy, sharing a couple of examples of the work that's been happening in their buildings. And I think, again, as I said earlier tonight, just generalize what you're going to hear tonight across the district, because what they're sharing tonight is happening everywhere. But we, in light of the change in our assessment plan, we felt this was a powerful way to sort of represent where kids have come over the last 3 trimesters. So, Ellen, the next slide, I wanted to set some context. You know, these 9 domains are inextricably tied with one another, that one doesn't work in harmony without the other one. And I wasn't going to spend any time, luckily for you, going over all of these. Some of this looks familiar to you, but what we're going to connect for you tonight is how teacher growth in their development of their practice is connected to ends monitoring. And they're very, very closely tied. And I could take any one of these boxes, any of us could, show you how congruent they are in a number of different ways. But our strong position is that when teachers get better at what they do, kids' achievement goes up. And so with the advent of PLC and working on collaborative structures and moving away from judging teachers and evaluating them to empowering them through development of their formative goals and providing them feedback throughout the year, peer-to-peer, and school leader to teacher, we're starting to see some really exciting things happen and some enthusiasm on the part of teachers in the work that they're doing. So that's the context. We're going to show you teacher growth and how that's tied to monitoring outcomes for kids.
I don't mean to interrupt. I just have to run and get Zachary at the front door if he didn't.
I won't personalize that.
Yeah.
I think that you saw this diagram maybe a year ago or so. It might be probably new for you, Dawn.
A little bit.
But again, very quickly, in the spring of 2014, we had up to that point assembled an ad hoc group of teachers and school administrators to take a look at our evaluation system. And as we wanted to balance evaluation, which is a lot about accountability, with teacher growth, we created this model in Essex Town. This really is sort of the concept in terms of how we're working with teachers. And in the middle, you can see it is about student growth. That's what good feedback is all about. It's not necessarily about evaluating teachers. It's about evaluating learning. And by evaluating learning, you have to put kids in the middle. And this constellation really, the font is fairly small, but really defines what good instructional practice looks like. And when you center and when you focus and get really good at these practices, student growth is going to occur. The growth model starts every year by students taking a look, or teachers looking at assessment data of their kids in their classroom based on our vision of teaching and learning, and they set some goals accordingly on where they want to bring their kids that year. So it has to be based on not what courses I want to take and classes I want to take, but how are my kids performing? Who are these kiddos coming up from second grade to third grade? And every year is different. And so our assessment data are really important to help teachers be informed about where do they need to focus their practice. And their practice is primarily in this constellation. They set learning and teaching goals. It's facilitated by building leadership. You might be, wow, that's pretty cool. They might be doing it individually, but oftentimes it's with teams or triads, focusing on, because there's a lot more collaborative teaming with kids. So they're designing learning and teaching goals. They design a growth plan. Again, teach principals will talk about that. They just don't set the goals and say, we'll see you in June. We've got to identify through a SMART goal format what are the resources that you need to put in place so that they can get better at what they do. We implement the process. There's an annual reflection, which principals are going through right now with educators, and then it starts over again. The outside, you can really important, self, colleagues, and leadership. This really is the PLC model. You're not in isolation. You really are working with peers on your team or in your grade level or content area that are supporting each other. So if you can envision a PLC meeting and one teacher is getting amazing results with her kids in third grade, it opens up the conversation for her colleague to say, what are you doing with your kids to get the type of result that you're getting? And that's the type of support that's being facilitated through the PLC process. So this is the growth process that all teachers are engaged in. This is our first year of inquiry, and we're gonna be going into a second year of inquiry next year. The state of Vermont, AOE, is very interested. Did you guys get that email today from Amy Fowler, Deputy Commissioner? Interested in knowing what are the teacher evaluation models in Vermont today, because we think because of educational quality standards, there's going to be some more standardized expectation that there be something in place, and there should be. Our thesis, again, is that evaluation is important, but more importantly is to make sure teachers are in control of their own destiny in terms of what they feel they need to focus on based on what we think as a town, what's good teaching. How do you define that? So we referred to SMART goals. This is our prompt so we don't get stuck on what A stands for. But I can say without actually having to look at it. And this really focuses the conversation. So rather than just saying I'm going to go to UVM and take a class, it's not about that anymore. It's really being about specific in terms of what you want for outcomes, not only in terms of teaching, but also what you want your kids to learn. It needs to be measurable, objective, concrete, something you can see and touch and reflect on. It needs to be attainable. Try to de-emphasize the loftiness of it, and what's, at a really pragmatic level, what's possible with 35 weeks of school that we have for kids. So it's got to be realistic, because we typically set really high standards, and that's where principals can really assist in making sure that it's doable. Results oriented, and it's not about the teacher taking the class. I'm using that as a lame example. It's about results of kids and demonstrating that what I did as an educator is having an effect on student learning. So we've got to talk about, what that metric is and how do we determine whether or not what I'm doing is working. And it be time bound. It's not just in perpetuity. There needs to be some benchmarks in that previous cycle. What are the benchmarks in my growth plan, and when am I going to be checked in? When am I going to check in on my goals? Again, facilitated by peer-to-peer and by the principal to make sure I'm on track. So we've moved from sort of independent thinking about our goals to, as a district, SMART goal formats. And again, Kevin, Peter, and Wendy will share some examples of that. Any questions before I turn over the mic? So it's really cool stuff. I must say, it's impressive. So I think we're starting with Mr. Briggs.
Of course.
So Kevin, you're on. Why don't you share your story?
So what you see here is one of my teachers, and this is their SMART goal, if you would. So in her classroom, we're looking at 4 kids to see if we can increase their reading levels by 2. Using her DRA, using common formative assessments throughout the year to measure that. This particular teacher worked incredibly close with our literacy coach, with Hillary. At one point it was weekly, and then it's kind of reduced back down. But this is an interesting one, and then this second part of that is their classroom library materials show progress. This is monitored regularly, and then it's actually by this Friday where she's going to make sure that everything is in VCAP. But this one's an interesting one. This isn't like any other teacher in the building. Her class is a self-contained class with some kids that have really struggled along the way. And what I found interesting through her reflection wasn't necessarily the measured part about the specific part about the reading levels. There are some unintended outcomes because of her instructions. So you can hit that, Ellen. So this was the data for this year. She's a 6th through 8th grade teacher, self-contained, I told you. And those are 4 students, A, B, C, D. In the fall, you can see where they made their gains along the way. Interesting with this is that I went back tonight to look at all these kids in their 5th grade year to see where they were. And every one of them that was enrolled at our school, there's one up there that's not, is exactly at the same level they were in 5th grade. And now this kid's up here, although she's 6th or 8th grade teacher, these are 7th and 8th grades are up here. So you can see that through the work that she's done with Hillary, redesigning her classroom, really putting a focus on reading instruction, has made some incredible gains. And although you see the scores here, I'm not a huge fan of numbers. I don't really zippity ha-ha with the numbers, but to me it's really the story that we're going to talk about. And
what is the level, Kevin, that you would expect in this grade level, reading level?
Well, it's probably in the 70s, 80s is really what I've been looking at.
For 60 for 6th grade, 70 for 7th grade.
Right, these are all 7th and 8th graders. But so you can see, and there's some kids that are on here that literally was at a 16 in the fall. So you can see the ranges that she has within her classroom, and the gains are just astronomical. So this is when I was sitting with her and we're having a conversation. This year was a fantastic year around academic learning. There was a definite shift in her practice this year, where the lessons that she designed had a much more academic focus. There was much more intentionality about the reading instruction than I've ever seen happen within this program. Working with Hillary, she had a station format. In other words, there were 3-4 tables depending on stations within her room. There would be a silent reading. She'd be working in a small group. They'd be working on a specific skill on their own. They'd be practicing. And then there'd always be some sort of formative assessment so that would guide her next day's lesson. That intentionality on reading really was a shift in practice even for these kids, I think, certainly in the middle school area. And then I really wanted to focus on the unintended outcomes. Because they started becoming comfortable, because of the work that she was doing, because of the PD that she was doing, professional development with Hillary, she was able to begin having these kids learn how to pick a book. And as elementary as that may sound, that wasn't happening here with these guys. And then my second bullet is a love of reading. And that 0 to 50, it's not the speed. It is 0 to 50 in that a young lady who's an 8th grader read 0 books 6th through 7th grade. She's read 50 books this year. And that's not a number that you see on DRAs. That's a number that you see here. And this girl, and there's another young man in her room, but this girl, you can't get her head out of a book. And it is just amazing. Amazing transformation. And Jess knows this young lady really well, and it's a different kid. The kids are begging for silent reading time. And they're not goofing around, rolling on the carpet. They really have their book, and they want to read what they have in their hands. And what's also happened is these kids are actually able to have what I put up there as meaningful conversations. They actually can start to infer what they're reading. They can actually make these connections that they never could have made prior to this. And it really comes back, and then the last one, and Rachel stole my thunder.
Sorry.
No problem. We should have talked ahead of time. You were here early enough. But was that this group then, with their confidence, wrote a book. And this is it here, and I'll let you guys all look at it in a little bit. But what Rachel alluded to earlier was that it is sitting at Indian Brook. It's a story walk. And on June 11th, I think it is, it's at the elementary school on the Ron Clapp Trail, so that the kids at the elementary school can go through it as well and be able to have this as a part of it. So, and again, it's beyond DRAs. It's beyond even her goal, which was just to increase reading. Increasing the reading was one piece, but then to increase the love of reading within her classroom is priceless, priceless. And it's something that numbers just don't really share enough. So I was gonna, if anybody wants to read that or look at it, it's just
One of the
really
things
cool.
that Kevin pointed out that just to amplify the importance is when teachers set their SMART goals, they have to be attainable. And the tack that we took was less is more. In order to take risks and to innovate and to be changing your practice, don't think of all 20 kids in your classroom. Think of the kids who, maybe a kid who's really tangled up, sort of a kid in the middle, and maybe some kid at the high end, but focus on a few kids at a time and don't try to do it all at once. And I think that there's also probably something to be said about this teacher who probably took that tack and tried to be intentional about certain
She
kids
did,
in the
and
classroom.
the intentionality of her day is changing more than I've ever seen, and it's just been it's been phenomenal to watch, and it's not uncommon throughout the whole school. I just chose this one as an example.
Before we go to Wendy, do anybody have questions for Kevin? Come on.
Is this something, and I think I saw that in the loop, that each year they're setting goals in the fall or at the end of this year or at some point in the beginning?
A little bit of both.
They set their goals.
You can do a little bit of both. When we have our conversations, Wendy and I were talking earlier, they're just phenomenal conversations we have with teachers. From that could certainly come, this is what I want to focus on.
Yeah.
I already have an idea, this is what I like to do. But what we tried to do is put in, or not try, what we're doing is having the teachers need to come up with some sort of a goal which then measures student learning. So a way for particularly in the K through 6, where you only have the kids for 1 year, you really want to get to know the kids so that you can pinpoint those kids and do that. But for my guys, 7th and 8th grade, definitely my UA teachers, definitely you guys, your UA teachers definitely could do that across a couple of years. And like Mark alluded to earlier, there's different types of goals. You have your SMART goal with yourself, but there's also a SMART goal that you might have as a team of people working together in your PLC, working together on your grade level to meet the needs of all these kids. So.
And you all as principals are cycling back on it with every teacher, both at the beginning to set and at the end.
3 times.
And of course in between. But
the goal is 3 times a year. You set goals in the beginning of the year. You have a mid-time check-in, and then you at the end of the year. And really, your check-in is to see how they're doing, what resources they need, what can I do to support you, and then they reflect at the end of the year, which is really the most powerful thing we do, anyways, as adults, right? Is to reflect on how things are going and what I can do, and that's where the real conversations are there, and that's for your more seasoned people beyond 2 years. Before that, we are in summative stages where.
By law, we have to do.
By law, by state statute, you need to do these more rigorous, often evaluation, often observations.
but this is happening for every teacher at every
Yes.
experience level. And just for the sake of everybody appreciating the amount of time I'm sure that principals are investing in that, how many teachers do you have with whom you're doing this?
I am not done writing up all my evaluations, and I did 40 yesterday.
Okay.
So
We have 135 teachers.
That's what I was
Right,
just
so-
wanting to make sure we all
Across the district.
across the district.
Right,
let's say
so we have
that
all the UAs
40 plus.
are in that, all our parents are part of that as well. All of special ed, kitchen custodians, secretaries, or administrative assistants, we need to do stuff with
We're
them.
doing some collaborating on that as well.
So it's great though, because I can't stress enough, and Wendy and I were talking about it earlier, the conversations are
It's
just
great stuff.
fantastic.
It's
And
very
that's where you
energizing.
really get to, it's even beyond what's on the paper. You get to hear the story about them, again, which is what we're here for today.
And it's not just what box do I fit in on the rubric, exceeding, or, you know what I mean? It really is about the teacher growth. It's pretty great stuff. It's really energizing at the end of the year, for me anyway. It's been some great conversations.
Keep talking, Wendy, you're up.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
I just have a question. So
Oh,
do
sorry.
the teachers ever get to share this with each other? Or, you know, because it's wonderful for us, but is there an opportunity for teachers to share or?
They haven't yet, but.
Haven't yet.
Like I said, at the middle
Although
school,
should be.
at the middle school level, no.
Yeah.
But we, like I said a few minutes ago, is that there's goals that they can have together. And that PLC piece of working together to fulfill a goal is much more powerful and a lot of times than individuals. Again, this is an individual teacher working with 14 kids.
I'm also finding now in the conversations that I'm having with teachers, and they're talking about, you know, how things have gone this year and some of the things they're thinking about for next year. And that jogs my memory about a conversation I had with another teacher a week before, you know, in the same format, who has a similar interest. And I said, you may want to talk with so-and-so, and then put the two of them together. And so I believe I have a kindergarten teacher who's probably going to be doing a sort of a collegial goal with an art teacher.
That's what I usually see is
Yeah.
the UAs try to
Yeah,
pair up.
because they both have a very similar interest in integrating art into the classroom.
Well, let's move on to Ms. Cobb.
I wanted to, before I get to this slide, I just wanted to say a couple of things, sort of what we were just saying.
Wendy,
It's
you've already
just
thanked
the end of the year, we're just, teachers, we're having some really excellent conversations about SMART goals. SMART goals are being set all over the place. Individual teachers are setting them, teaching teams are setting them, PLC, grade levels are setting them, and students are setting them. So it's really just becoming something we do in our practice, all of us. And we're going to show an example of a student SMART goal tonight. I am. And so this was a teacher who had all of her students set SMART goals at the beginning of the year based on some of their own data. It might have been related to reading, it might have been related to math, but it was a goal that they wanted to set and meet. So we're going to talk about one little guy tonight. This is one classroom teacher, one of her SMART goals. She set two, one around math, and this is her reading goal. So she had 4 students in her classroom who were performing below grade level on the DRA at the beginning of the year. She wanted to raise initially she had said, I want them all to be on grade level. So that kind of gets at that attainable. But with our conversation, she decided that if all students increased by 4 levels, that would be phenomenal. They might not still be up to grade level, but they would be significantly stronger readers than they were in the fall. So again, measurable using the DRA as well as classroom formative assessments, progress monitoring along the way using, trade books, those kinds of things. Attainable, we had 4 students, A, B, C, and D. You'll notice 2 of them did raise their levels by 4, and then 2 increased their levels by 2 levels. However, in my conversation with the teacher, she's like, well, the DRA doesn't say that they're 4 grade levels above, or 4 levels above, but they're way stronger readers, and they're this close. I think one of those students missed the fluency cutoff by 2 seconds, or something like that, so didn't technically pass that level, but these are much stronger readers. The results oriented, you'll see the comment benchmarks developed. It wasn't just by the end of the year, it really was within that by the end of the year, they had to say by January, where do I want these kiddos to be? By February, where do we want them to be? So that's that progress monitoring along the way. How are we doing? How are these kiddos doing? How are these kiddos doing? She did a lot of work with Hillary Kissel, both individually as well as in her PLC team. Is still working with this, with the coach as well. Is there another? Where's the T? There we go. That's just by the end of the year, I think it says. So with permission, let's talk about her reflections first, and then we'll share a brief video clip of the kiddo who set his SMART goal. These are teacher reflections, greater access to all content areas, so able to read much richer literature, the confidence, she talked a lot about the level of confidence, sort of what Kevin was just saying about his kiddo, just the confidence in their reading went through the roof. They're learning to set their own goals and meet them and then set new ones. I love this next bullet. I learned to use data with a laser focus. Just really, what are we looking at and how are we going to help these kids? Speaking of a laser. So again, she worked really closely with our coach, looking at individual student work and planning next steps. And she just added, while all students did not improve by 4 levels based on the DRA, they all showed significant and steady progress. So we're gonna watch a short clip of Charlie with parents' permission. This was a student who, before we start the clip, these are the books that Charlie was reading in the fall. So this was the assessment book, Giant in the Forest, and this is an actual trade book. And in June, he's reading this, and you can see the difference as they go around. He's independent with Mr. Flat Stanley, and this is where Charlie's reading now. This is a level 30. This is his instructional level. So you can see this to this to this this year. He made a solid year's gain this year, and he is so proud of himself. Oh my gosh. Great stuff. Ready for the clip? Okay.
Ready.
This is Charlie. This is Charlie's SMART goal, and we might have to pause occasionally. We just go back to the beginning and just pause at his goal. This better work. It worked earlier tonight. Oh, come on.
That's a shame.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Phew.
You want me to stop?
Okay, pause right here. So his SMART goal, thank you, Ellen.
It's not pausing though.
It's not pausing. You should be able to clip right.
Should you blow it up? See if it'll.
Yeah, blow it up.
Yeah, up to the upper right. See if it'll give you some more options.
There you go. So that's the teacher's whole goal.
I can keep pushing it back, but it's not allowing me to stop it.
Okay, let's just
You want me to
go
just do
through
it?
it. Yeah. So Charlie's goal was to, I think he had a specific level that he was shooting for, which he reached. I think his level was a 24. This is Melanie's goal, way more detailed than the slide you saw. I just gave you a summary. This is Mr. DeHaan, special educator. It's his assessment in the fall. Sound. Ah. Get the speaker.
Isn't that one right there?
Does she still have her posture job?
I don't think so. No.
I could kind of hear
I could
Melanie.
kind of hear it.
There we go.
And has made smart goals for himself and reached those goals. And we'd like to hear from Charlie about how he did that.
Well, I basically just persevered through the whole thing, thinking about how much better I would get at reading, and it started to get easier through the weeks, and then it started to get easier and a lot easier about the words and figuring it out, like fluency and everything.
So Charlie, could you tell us some of the ways that you use to help yourself become a better reader?
I looked at the beginning of the words and the end of the words to figure out what it was, and I looked at thinking about the sounds and making sense of the sentence, and reading on and looking for word families, and it started to get easier.
Did having a SMART goal help you to become a better reader?
Yes, because I had something to work to, but I didn't really want to read. My dad said it'll make it easier to read when you're done with the SMART goal.
Would you be willing to read part of a book that you chose today?
The name is a present for my sister. Let's go to the candy castle Ryan showed us. It goes around and around the circles on the metal tracks.
Could you stop there, Charlie? How did you know that was metal instead of retail? What did you do?
I saw that there was it was met and then
Nice job.
historical story that is believed to be true but cannot be true.
Well done.
Wow, that's awesome.
He's so proud of himself. That's what it's all about, really, is their learning and their confidence. He's just so thrilled. And he became a reader this year. Very exciting. I just wanted to say, I looked at a quote from one of the SMART goals, and it sort of ties to Charlie. It says, "I gained a new understanding of my practice and have developed new skills while improving upon others." To me, that says it all as well. Teachers are, they're improving their practice. We have goals, teachers are setting goals around math enrichment, what are some of the other ones I have? Reading, writing, comprehension, artistic expression, band and orchestra, research and inquiry, PLC leadership goals, working with the frameworks. We have Sarah Jablonski is learning more about the frameworks and how she can support teachers in the classroom with mentor texts. Student engagement, lots of goals around engagement. How do I get my students more engaged in the learning? Some really, really great stuff happening across the school in a lot of different ways. And a lot of excitement. Teachers are talking about next year and how can I either take this goal and bring it further next year or, change it to something entirely different based on what she saw in the class this year. It's pretty cool.
Any questions for Wendy?
It was third grader.
Third grader. Yeah.
When you think about the challenge of figuring out what the word says, then understanding what the sentence is, being able to be fluent, and I mean, there's so much to it.
And on video.
But I was impressed with his
Yeah.
use of vocabulary too. He just appropriate use of his, oral speech. Persevered,
Well,
yeah.
this
I think third
classroom,
graders.
actually,
should
as a
always-
school, we've talked a lot about grit and pushing through and making mistakes and that being okay. And Melanie's class in particular, she really ran with the whole idea of developing grit in kids, and they use that language, persevere, I have grit, I can do it, if I'm
great.
wrong, that's okay. All of that kind of stuff is really prevalent in that classroom, and it shows.
Focus on mindset earlier.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thanks, Wendy. Last.
Could I just make sure you thank Charlie for us too? for sharing his
Absolutely,
story?
yes.
And
That was
Melanie.
nice.
And Melanie.
Yes, I will.
Nice.
Perseverance paid off.
That's right.
You're gonna need that.
All right, so I'm not accustomed to being last,
Oh dear.
but I'm going to adjust.
And
This is like-
persevere.
This is like 2.5, second time in a row that I've been last. So what I'm sharing with you is a SMART goal set by a second grade teacher who, in our discussions at the beginning when she was coming up with the SMART goal, she had said she felt very comfortable working in literacy with kids who are above grade level, at grade level, and what we've come to call cuspy readers, who are those kids who are almost there but not quite. Where she felt she really needed to boost her strength was working with kids who are really tangled up. And so she chose 2 students in her classroom who are on IEPs, one of whom was reading one of whom was reading at a fall in the fall was reading at a DRA 3. So this is a DRA 3 book. So you can pass that around and take a quick look at it. Then she had another student. The other student was reading at a DRA 4. And so that's just sort of a sample of the kind of reading that these second graders were doing. So she set up a plan to work with the special educator assigned to her room and the paraeducator in her room, and the 3 of them met weekly to make sure that what was happening in the classroom was also what was happening in the special educator and the supplemental instruction. So they met weekly. They went over all formative assessment results. They looked at examples of the child's work, of both children's work. They planned the following week's lessons. They planned the mini lessons. They planned the interventions together. They made sure that everything was really perfectly aligned for these 2 children in her class. And because the second grade was also working with Hillary as a grade level, she was able to tap into Hillary as well for strategies. So they, if you go to the next one, Ellen, so here are the results. So in the fall, the student who was reading at a level 3 had managed to reach a level 12, which is this one here. The student who was reading at a level 4 was reading at a level 14, and then I threw student C is in here, and I'll talk about how student C ended up in there in a little bit. You'll notice that student A moved in February, and so in talking about it, the teacher said, "Oh, I was so looking," and I said, "Well, I know you have another child in your class who was right around in, I think, January, was placed on an IEP." I said, why don't we start looking at that student's work? And which apparently she said, well, that'll work because I'm already doing it. They had sort of folded that student into the work with the special educator. And so I have added that onto here. You'll see that student B at the end, this was B 2 weeks ago, was reading at a level 18, which is this. And student C, who had started at a level 12, was now reading at a level 20. In talking about what Mark was saying, just the phenomenal, the phenomenal growth of those kids and their abilities to go from a level 3 or a level 4, which is a highly predictable text with a very predictable pattern, that you basically, you get the pattern, and then every now and then there's a word change, and that's where you have to focus, and that's where you have to bring in your skills of looking at the first sounds and putting the word together, does it make sense, and all of that, to then go to a level 18 or level 20 where there is no pattern. It is a plethora of words. It's the difference is huge, and the fact I folded student C into this because I think it's a perfect example. She focused on 2 particular kids in her classroom. Student C benefited from that focus, and next year the children she has in that classroom will benefit from what she gained by working with a special educator. She, if you go to the next, her reflections, she talks about, there's a lot of discussion about, the percentage of accuracy in the words per minute, but really for me what's crucial here is thanks to the weekly meetings with special educators, I have a clearer understanding of how the disability impacts the student learning and now have different strategies and accommodations to make learning achievable. So some very specific strategies to work with kids, and that's been a huge focus for us all year at EES, is we need to figure out exactly what it is that the child is stumbling on, and then exactly what do we need to do to help them past that. We started out looking at, as I had talked about, the cuspy readers, the ones who are almost there, and we just keep expanding so that the scope of what the classroom teacher is able to do is increasing all the time. I'm also looking at the weekly meetings that she's had with the special educator and how crucial that is. We know that the consistency of language and the consistency of approach is incredibly important for kids who are getting it. And then you look at children who are struggling, and if they're hearing one thing in the classroom and then they're going out for supplemental services and hearing something even just slightly different, they think they're learning, the potential is there for them to think that they're learning something entirely new. Right. And so I really want to look at how can we make certain that special educators and classroom teachers are setting aside time to really have those discussions on a regular basis about kids. Not sure weekly would be possible, but certainly on a much more regular basis than we currently have. And then through that meeting, they were also able to they had sort of minor, mini goals along the way. And then they would adjust and set new goals as they went.
Thanks, Peter. Questions for Peter?
The teacher that did this, and in your case too, are there older teachers that have been teaching the same way for a long time, so it was harder for them to adjust to a new way, or was it a new, you know what I'm saying?
This is a teacher who's been, this is not a new teacher. This teacher has been around for over a decade. And I hesitate to say that that the more veteran teachers are the ones that are, because there's not, I know veteran teachers who, I have known veteran teachers, it's never the same year twice for them. They are always learning, they're always, and I have worked with teachers in other places that literally opened up a file cabinet and took out October, kaboom, and there it was. But what I think both Wendy and Kevin hit on the fact that that this teacher growth model is leading to a lot of really powerful conversations among teachers. I think about, I sat with 2 first grade teachers who did a goal together, and they came in and they were talking about engagement. We really want to get our kids engaged in reading, and so through the conversation, we talked about, well, how do you really measure engagement? And then we brought in one of the literacy coaches from Vermont Reads into the conversation, who said engagement comes about as a result of mastery. It's when you're really getting somewhere, when you really feel like you're getting it, that's where your engagement comes from.
Right.
And so their goal eventually changed from engagement to really mastering skills leading to engagement.
You heard that from Charlie.
Yeah, yeah. It was, now that if I can get some traction, you know, if I feel like I'm getting there, then that's where you get the engagement. It's when you don't feel like you're getting anywhere that you get rolling around on the floor.
Absolutely.
Great.
And my teacher as well is not a brand new teacher. It's just been phenomenal.
That's wonderful.
So the big takeaways, if you haven't jotted those down in your head, is really, Kevin's used would just be very, very intentional based on the kids that we have in front of us, and really working with individual teachers to help them stretch professionally where they think they need to go based on their kids. And we heard Hillary's name come up several times because she's been just a great resource. But there are other educators who are also, if not maybe equal in knowledge and skill to Hillary, certainly have a lot to offer other teachers. So the structure again of that retirement event, Dawn, we heard how many teachers talk about PLCs on stage. I don't know, 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
But it's just these collaborative structures we've created that allows teachers to have that conversation.
And I also think that they're helping teachers, they're clearly helping teachers change their practice. I was reading another reflection today about some work one teacher has been doing with Betsy. And she was doing a lot of time tests. It was time test, beginning of the year. And through her work, and you know, some kids weren't improving on their math facts. And so through her work with Betsy, she realized that that's not necessarily the best way. So they read an article together, they talked about it, and they did some planning around teaching kids strategies versus that memorization, and her kids actually did way better. And so that was the reflection she had in her goal around kids improving their math fact fluency. It was really about their learning and their conceptual understanding versus memorizing facts. And that work she did with Betsy, and the focus on that goal allowed her to gain that understanding.
And in special ed too, and Mark's talked about this a little bit, mostly during budget time, but we've been reconfiguring quite a bit as well. So, so in order for them to be able to collaborate with regular ed, how do we look at their jobs and make it manageable, and also look at streamlining the instructional assistants, the classroom teachers, and the special educators, so they're functioning as a team rather than just sort of looking at a schedule and plugging in who can fill what time, but really how do they work together for all kids. If you think about, so we're looking at the total population, not just kids on IEPs, but how do they function as a group around a group of kids. And then the other piece is sort of this ongoing PD that they've been doing around how to interpret evaluation data, and really looking at those pieces that were just in that teacher's reflection, which was kind of cool, about how the disability really impacts the kid in the classroom, rather than just, well, here are the strengths and weaknesses and needs, and how do we write a goal and sort of, you know, provide a service and put the kid back in regular ed, but how do you link it all together and talk as a team about what are the barriers and how do we get through and how do we adapt and modify so that it's sort of removing those barriers to learning rather than just sort of a service and back approach. So it's a little different too.
And I had a meeting today with the teacher leaders for the kindergarten, first and second grade, and had a really fascinating conversation about setting, having the PLCs set goals for next year. So having them set an overarching goal that is related to their teamwork and their work, how do they work together, and then to then have separate goals, content area goals for each trimester. So, and those content area goals would then feed into that overarching goal, which I think is probably going to have something to do with making certain that classroom practice changes based on what they've learned from each other. And they were, they were psyched to get back to their teams and start talking about it.
I was just going to say, I'm so struck, and I continue to be, by the capacity building that happens in this type of work, and the transferability of that knowledge to their next student, wherever they are on the spectrum, and the, reflection on their own practice to say, this is my new best practice, and this is, my plan for my schedule for the next year, because the next two kids that I'm focused on have similar or different goals, but it is such a smart way to work from a purely efficiency standpoint, but to think about it all the more importantly from its impact on every kid in each of those classrooms, as all those educators are being so intentional about the work they're doing. I'm blown away. I'm really appreciative of their enthusiasm for working in that way, because I can't imagine how exciting it must be for them as well as professionals. It's pretty cool. So thank you.
It's changing what I've seen. I mean, I don't know about previous to this year, but I feel sort of a rumbling, I guess, if you will, just a change in how people are working together. I mean, there's just a vibe of excitement and folks are wanting to learn and grow. It's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, I don't want to drag this out too much longer, but there's a culture of excellence.
Yeah.
Already instilled, I think, in Essex. So when the excellence, I think 5 years ago was excellence on its own, and I see it now as a team of people trying to do better, trying to move forward, and certainly the K-8 talk has brought that out as well.
I think what I find what's astonishing is that it really wasn't that long ago that you could walk into a second grade classroom or a first grade or a kindergarten during math time, and you'd walk into a second grade and they would be doing double digit addition, and then you'd walk into the next door and they would be doing something completely different. All of it tied to the Vermont standards, but not doing it at the same time, so that they're not able to talk to each other. How did you get those? How did your kids get this? And now it's not at all surprising to walk. It would be very surprising to me, in fact, if I walked into a second grade classroom, if I walked into each of them during math time and saw somebody doing something different, I'd be like, and they actually, what would happen is I'd probably walk in and they go, I can explain this. So I mean, it's really in the course of 5 years, it's a radical change.
And that's equity for kids, and from where we sit, that's a real matter of equity for kids. And I'm hoping, and I don't imagine that it feels as though it saps a teacher's unique approach, but to be on the same page with what you're trying to approach, and how you do it with your own personal style is still a gift to the classroom and to the connections they make with kids. But to have the non-negotiables be around what do kids need to know and understand and do, and when, lets them grow from each other. It's just really cool, and I'm excited for kids, because I think that's really, really important to people, not having to worry about which teacher their kid gets, frankly. I mean, it's this time of year where families get crazy about this stuff. And
they do?
Understandably. I know you don't know that, but
I think, it was like 2 or 3 years ago when we had the high school group here, and they talked about depending on the path that you took. And they pointed out the inequities amongst the route that you can go. So I agree with you. I think within 2 or 3 years you'll start to see that really just completely.
Well, it's a great segue. Just my closing comments is, we talked about this actually a couple of weeks ago, that we're moving from sort of tacit compliance. We have to do it to really true commitment. And it is about connecting the work with the passion that teachers have. And that's just a huge hats off to the three of you and to Jessica and Ellen for making that happen in the field. And you know, it is all about leadership, and this leadership team is second to none, I think, in this region anyway, to be able to focus on the right things so that teachers feel empowered, supported, cared for, and yet held accountable to some really high standards. And that is an art form. I mean, it takes an effective leader to be able to be tight and loose and be really clear, non-negotiable, negotiable, whatever you want to call it. And these guys have done a great job of that. So other presentations, I think in the future will be really important for Ellen to share sort of structurally where we are with curriculum instruction. For Jessica's done a lot of work with the systems issues from special ed, some really phenomenal stuff that I just can't fit it all in. But we'll take one of those green boxes off the screen again. We'll do a presentation in the fall in terms of where we are with that.
That would be great.
Yeah. So thanks for all you do.
I'm going to take a break and do some reading here. I need my books back.
I promised I'd bring them back.
Stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. There's nothing burpees won't help.
Thanks for staying late.
Thank you guys
Watch
very
out for the
much.
moose.
Yeah, no kidding.
Is there a moose around?
What?
This time, oh yeah, especially.
Oh, just in general. Okay.
In my neighborhood.
I didn't know if there was one like
I was
that's
like,
been hanging
yeah.
around here. I was like, I want to see.
Hanging out with the bears.
They
got
got
all
to
sorts
the
of
edge
stuff
back
out
and see
there.
what they think.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for
Thank you
coming
very
out.
much. I'm going to acknowledge that we are way over schedule
I know,
and
my
say
bad.
that
So-
I am
It's all right.
hopeful that, as rich as that has all been, that everybody feels comfortable with our liberty taking around the schedule. But
I just couldn't stop kids from talking.
No.
No, it's fine.
or us from
they did
asking
great.
questions, because
They were
it
great.
is our, I don't know, it's definitely one of my favorite meetings of the year to have the opportunity to hear from kids. So thank you guys for indulging us.
So moving on.
We are on
Would you
to
like a motion to
on the
approve?
tax anticipation note
Okay.
borrowing. if
I make
could.
the motion that we approve the tax anticipation note and resolution and non-arbitrage. I can't read it. My printer didn't work.
Arbitrage.
Certificate.
Yeah.
I have these ink in my printer.
I'll second that.
Okay, any conversation? You guys know what this is. This is we have to borrow money before we get taxes.
Yep.
That's what this one's about. No further conversation. Then all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0.
So I'm going to have you sign that for $3.2 million.
Your signature's on there too, right?
No, it's not.
Make sure that
So front page. Yeah. This is Treasurer. This is Cheryl. That's not us.
Yeah.
So all five here.
Okay.
Okay. And then you flip 2 pages in, and then only 4 of you here, and then Rachel, who's the clerk,
Okay.
At the bottom.
is at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So only 4 and Rachel, and then the last one I think as well is
It's 4 and
just
Rachel.
4 and Rachel.
Well, maybe
Okay.
you should
Okay.
let us do it first, Rachel
And
do it
go
last,
back
and
to
that way
Rachel. I'll sign it
Rachel
and
does
go
the
that
first- the
way.
first
How's
page.
that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Nobody signed on Rachel's line.
Yeah, that's right. Since Rachel's going last, we will have
I'll
Rachel take us away on
Okay.
the. It is our board's self-evaluation 4.7.
4.7.
Which
And
she
I
did a
will
nice
do,
job with.
I will do
Yeah.
the thank you. I'll try to do the abbreviated version here. So basically, what this policy is in regards to is that the board is held accountable and is evaluated on what their job and role is, using the job description, interpreting our self-evaluation of what we need, what we are doing right, what we need to have improvement on. And so this is done twice a year. So Cashel did the last one in December. And so basically what I did is in blue I marked the changes that were done. So all I did in 4.7.2 was just to remind us about the self-evaluation. And so again, basically that was pretty much taken from Cashel. There's not been a lot that's changed since our evaluation and the end of summer. What I did look at was 4.7.3, And when we evaluate our meetings, that document is shared, I believe, with all of us. And so, but it's not something I'd ever even realized that was shared with all of us until I started looking for it. But one of the trends that I noticed was the first 7 meetings of the year we were overwhelmingly positive. And so what I did, though, is I could not get it to go from this, or else I would have printed it out for you guys. So I had to do it from, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize a printer could print that small. But what I did is I looked at, while we still remain primarily positive, we do have, a variety of things that need improvement. What I tried to do is summarize those areas. Timely arrival of reports or information so we can be prepared for discussion was something that came up several times throughout that. Feeling rushed to make decisions without the opportunity for additional information gathering or more public feedback, being able to get more response from the public. And then the other thing that was commented several times was returning to items covered in either an executive session or open meeting where it might have been talked, but we never came back around to read up that. And then going into 4.7.4 was to address how we were going to deal with these. And even though we set up the evaluation, which that was new, starting from our summer retreat, but what we never, I don't recall, and I couldn't find in any minutes, and granted, I think I took the minutes, so it was my own fault that we discussed it and I didn't capture. But is talking about, okay, so now what do we do with this information? How do we make improvements? And where is it within our works plan to discuss that and come back to it? How do we make sure we come back to those items? How do we address some of the gaps we've noticed, and how do we hold ourselves accountable for that? So that's what, and so I felt that was a good lead into either, I didn't know if this was the right time or if that was something that we want to consider as being a lead-in for our annual retreat.
I would say the latter. Yeah, exactly.
So that was
It
the
could be a
only
lengthy
thing that I,
yeah.
So really that was the only thing, and I did mark it in blue there, but that was, so 3.7.4 was the only one I changed from insubstantial compliance to impartial compliance because of that gap in what we were doing with that information.
So right now, make a note, that's part of the summer planning session.
Right. I am doing that right now. As a matter of fact.
So that's my evaluation of where we stand on 4.7.
Good.
So, any questions?
No, I think it's interesting that we've made more comments on our feedbacks, which I think is good.
I think so too.
Yeah.
That was actually a worry of ours, that because it
Right.
was so positive,
We didn't want it to become
were we asking the right questions?
useful, right.
Is it actually useful? How is it changing
Right.
what we're doing? And so that's
Right.
encouraging that there's more maybe meaningful feedback. And I think actually it's happened before, and I'm sure probably Daniel especially would remember, that there's sometimes, like, because we get better at this, we also get more appropriately sort of critical of where we are, because we know more about what either we don't know or that we would like to see improvement on. And I actually think that's a good thing. I don't feel that that's bad or a poor reflection on the efforts we're making. I just think it's maybe sometimes a more informed, honest assessment of where we are, and it, especially that idea, should we have a sort of a follow-up loop in place or plan.
I think also segueing back to the SMART goals we were all talking about, I think being the absolute perfect board is not an attainable goal.
Right.
Being a better board is. Okay, now that we're a better board, we can be a better board.
Right.
Okay, now that we're a better board, we can be a better board. There's we can keep
continuous
getting better.
improvement.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's just never make our goal to be a perfect board.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we're probably safe in that.
We can always,
Yep.
always
That's
keep getting
great,
better.
right. Any further comments, questions, discussions? Thank you very much, Rachel. So
Yeah,
I will
thank you.
take a motion to accept this monitoring report 4.7.
I'll move that we accept monitoring report 4.7 as presented.
I will second.
Terrific. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Rachel. I'm just going to figure out where my all right, let me just go there because I don't know where it went. Where'd my agenda go? Oh, draft summer retreat agenda, and I do have a few things that I had noted as I was trying to. I have a note that I've been keeping as we had things. The one thing I had on my note for work that I felt we should take a look at this board retreat is our policy procedures for policy governance. So what are our operating procedures as a board in a situation where somebody is feeling as though we are not in compliance, a parent or a teacher or so we don't really have a set of operating procedures that fall underneath especially our local policies, but even those, there's a process for them going through like harassment or bullying that is in that policy that includes procedures, or those procedures are kept elsewhere. But if ultimately we were to need to become the arbiter in a particular situation because it's, at a level that requires our attention, we just don't have our own operating procedures that would clearly give us our guidance to say this is step 1, 2, 3. It's been handled or it needs to be moved elsewhere. So I'd like for us to take a look at that. That was the one thing I had on my list. Now I've added to it our sort of follow-up and I love the idea of us perhaps paralleling or modeling around the teacher growth model, this idea of maybe SMART goals and looking how that might fit in our monitoring of our self-evaluation, and maybe that in itself would provide our own feedback loop if we aligned it with both our monitoring reports, but other check-ins that follow back on these. Maybe that's an idea.
I know, I realize I knew, but have you set a date for this retreat?
We have not. We had a week that we were looking at, and it was the week, if I'm recalling correctly, before our first meeting or something like that, wasn't it? It was in August. I think I had a placeholder in there. It may have me headed to Notre Dame, but I'm not so
details.
positive. It's but I think that we had a placeholder for the week of the 17th. And I don't know if there's any other feedback on how that looks for others.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, me too.
I think from my standpoint it would have to be pretty early that week. Is there a day that's better for others?
What week are we looking at?
The week of the 17th.
I think you have a problem with the 21st.
Actually, dude, I am working on the 21st, but only half a day. That's his birthday.
That's a huge problem. Big.
21st, is that, when do we start school?
The 26th.
26th is Wednesday, the 26th.
We start the week before teachers.
Right, but I'm going, my life's calendar is based on the 26th. I believe I am out of town the week prior to the 26th. The whole week.
Okay.
So the week
is
of
that
the
the
17th.
That's the week of the 17th.
That was the week of the 17th.
Sorry, guys.
So the week of the 10th?
I can
Is
come
the
in
week
by.
of the 10th workable?
I can come in by
for
phone.
Yeah. That would be a
That
long
is the
phone
one
call.
week where John can get off. It's the
You guys
only
might
week
be
in the
off.
entire summer we
I'm gonna
could
send
actually
out
do a
meeting wizard.
vacation.
That would be
Lots of
awesome.
options,
Yeah.
and you guys
That would
just
be great.
tally it up.
Yeah.
Do you want to
and-
maybe write down our vacation
I
weeks?
mean-
Just so that,
Sure.
because we
Yeah.
all have
Well,
to be there, so.
Yes.
I'm
I mean, and it's not a definite. It's just it is
Yeah,
the
no,
only
you,
week
that
that
needs
if
to
he
be
can take
prioritized.
time off,
Those
we
weeks
can-
now, Cashel?
Yeah, for me, week of August 3rd.
That's gonna be a problem. She's August 3rd.
I know.
No, you're August 3rd, you're August 10th, and I'm
10th,
August 17th.
Dan is 17th.
Yeah, I believe so. I will send you an email if that is not correct.
What you got?
I got nothing, so whatever you want to do.
Yeah, we're together.
I know.
Yeah,
By
ooh.
then I'm vacation.
I guess maybe we're gonna have to do this next week.
No,
Rachel,
I
do you have a
am
week?
out until we get to
What?
July.
Do you have
Even
a
if we
week?
looked at the
It's
end
just
of
the
July.
August 10th. Well,
would be the one to potentially
would
avoid.
be
so we're
well
Okay.
the 3rd and the 10th.
What
because
about
I'm
the last
working
week of
on covering
July?
Transplant.
That's what I'm thinking. We may be looking more like the last week in July. I think we were intentionally to say, oh, shouldn't do July because people travel, but it's sounding as though
August is
the-
when we travel.
August is really trickier.
Apparently, yeah.
And
You
the
know,
end of
right-
July, from my standpoint, is easier.
Right now, I mean, John may not, and you know what, can we just,
Yeah,
let me find out for
let's-
certain. John is not sure if he can get that week off at
Yeah.
all. So if I can get clarification, that,
But if you should
because
be able
we
to,
start,
or if
well,
you could even, if we even
I'm
had
just
a
saying,
couple
we start
of dates
getting
that
to
we
July,
said,
it's not much better.
right? Oh, it's July, the end of July.
Just
bad
with
too.
kid activities
Yeah,
and trying
yeah.
to get people and working, so.
Well, why don't we do the meeting planner and not
Mhm.
avoid August,
Okay.
the week of August 10th
Okay.
just yet, Mark? But
Okay.
it sounds like the week of the 17th isn't good, and then we actually, I think, are supposed to do our first meeting, August 20, whatever it is, 4th. The first meeting for the year is supposed to be on the 24th.
There's not a work calendar out yet, right?
There is not. That's when we would do the work calendar, which makes things all the more complicated.
But we do know the first meeting date is August 24th.
That is the expected first meeting date,
Okay.
and it may actually be this day my kid has to be at college in Boston. So, let's all work on some clarity, and maybe the meeting wizard Mark that maybe starts somewhere in mid to end July and goes through then, and
Mhm.
we could just click on those that are available. We have done this in the past as haven't we done it as a long
All day.
day?
Well, that's what we did last year,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it was like 6 hours maybe, and we had lunch.
Yep.
We
Yeah.
also had a guest speaker, and then we had Nicole come and talk with us about contract negotiations and other open
Mhm.
meeting issues. Is there anything topical that we'd like to be looking for someone to break up our day with their wisdom?
Well, just
in our
before we
work?
get to that, while I'm thinking about an
Yeah.
agenda item, might be going back to look at the policies, because we did a lot of work at starting to
Yes.
clean
Yeah,
up
we
our
do.
policies,
Yes.
and we need to relook at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knocked off the low
Where we
hanging
stand.
fruit.
But
Yeah,
we
where we
we
stand,
didn't do the
what's,
high
policy
fruit.
what's,
review.
exactly, you
Yep.
know, we have some work to do
Where
there.
are we and what's left to be
Yeah.
done? Yep.
So the other option, Kim, would be if we did like 2 half days. Is that what you're gonna?
Well, I was just, it may be just really too hard to break it up in that way.
Right.
It maybe, if 6 hours is too long, I don't know, if we can find a day and you guys are
Then
willing,
we'll go
I
with
just
that.
wanted
Yeah.
to check my assumptions
Yeah.
that if people are gonna take the day, that we can, say we're gonna dig in and we're gonna come up with,
Mhm.
the 9 to 3 that can work for folks, maybe.
Sure.
Okay, I
That's a
didn't
good
wanna
plan.
assume that. And, I think we were at St. Mike's last year. Mark,
Yeah, I
is
don't
that-
think that's,
Not as,
that room's no longer available.
okay.
Oh, bummer.
Why don't you use a new room at the police station?
Oh,
Yeah.
We could do that.
I'll find something.
yeah.
I mean, it might be a
Mark's good about
possibility.
hunting
Yeah, I
down
kind of
some
enjoyed
stuff.
meeting there.
Or the old room in the,
On the lunch.
or the
They're
old
good.
room in the town hall, because nobody uses that one anymore, because they're all at the new police station.
That's right, that's right. There's space everywhere. No.
You go to the cells at the police station. No. Lock us in until you get your work done.
Yeah.
If you guys are comfortable with it, if you have other ideas, if you don't mind, if you think of them later, shoot them to me. Or if we think that there's sort of an expert in the field, or even if we don't know who that person is, but there's something that we would really like more on, more information on, or more expertise than, we're getting good at what we do, and we're working hard at our continuous growth and learning, but if we figure out what the areas are that we maybe want to grow a little further, we might be able to figure out through VSBA or otherwise who a good resource for the conversation might be.
Yep, I'm out the week the 17th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, is there anybody?
Good job.
I just, what Kevin mentioned, those personalized
Learning
learning
things.
plans that were coming up, I don't know, that sounded kind of,
That would be good to
find out about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a board member and a parent.
And maybe in the context of how one of the things that struck me in terms of the professional development that the teachers are doing and building their capacity, personalized learning plans require even a different skill set in some ways of teachers to be sort of coaches and mentors, and that may be a little bit of a growth area for people, and so maybe learning more about it ourselves, what that means, what does that mean for our resourcing that, and what does that mean for the journey through the high school, over which at least currently there's not, you know, a continuum that's seamless at this point. What do we do in the interim? How do we think that informs the work of, let's say, the red, for instance? So maybe that, I like exploring that idea a little bit for others.
Is it premature to put in there how we are going to deal with a merger situation, given that we won't actually know anything by then? I think it's too
My
early
guess
to-
would be by that point in the summer, there'll be progress enough that we'll certainly want to be updating, and maybe that's one of those things that is, we know how it's progressing through the summer, we know how much of the agenda that takes up and what we might need or not need at that point.
I mean, I guess we don't really know that it's going to happen or not until whatever,
Right,
spring
and I
of the
would think we're
following year.
probably at that point along the continuum of responses to the draft articles, I would think, Mark. And so minimally, we would need to be updating our group, and maybe at that point, it'd be obvious whether or not we need somebody else to join us for that conversation. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I have it on my laptop. Make sure it's on the list for the summer, and wherever we are, we are.
Whatever it is, that's what we deal with. Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll just know that much more. Because the regularly scheduled meetings actually are supposed to be done June 30th, which they're not going to, we're not going to be done with what was anticipated in terms of the schedule as a red committee at this point. We know that for sure. So I think tomorrow we'll probably learn more about what the rest of it might be anticipated to look like.
So it just stops?
No, I mean, those were just all
Oh, I
the
know, that
meetings
comes
that
up with
have
your
been on
report,
there.
but I didn't-
But yeah, so no, there's still plenty of work to be done. I think the schedule was a little aggressive initially, and in part based on availability of consultants and stuff. So, if you guys have other ideas and you send them to us, and you guys, if there's one thing I could ask, because we may have need for special meetings at different times, if I think I have everybody's cell phone. I don't know if you have a cell phone. Okay,
I'm
so
home
I would
all
just call
summer.
you at home, because
My school ends on the 18th.
if
I'm
you guys
home.
think to maybe check your emails maybe once a week or so, like it shouldn't be a burdensome summer. There really should be very little email traffic happening, but in case we need a special meeting for any purpose, or also if I'm gonna send an email that I'd love for you guys to take a look at and respond, I'll send a text and I'll call you, Dawn, and so that we could get to a draft agenda when we're at that place, Mark, and you guys might be able to, might prompt some thinking on something that we hadn't thought of that we really should. So I'd
Okay.
like for that time to be as valuable to all of us as possible. Any other thoughts on that?
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks guys. And Red Study Committee update, we had a financial analysis provided at the last meeting from an outside consultant giving a stab at cost benefit analysis, I guess, if you will, or at least the cost side of it and the potential tax incentives and their impact. I think there were some flaws in the assumptions and a little bit, there was a lot of information that seemed as though when you get right down to it, we would never consider option 1, option 2, but option 3 is if we were to have this move in the direction of unification and have an affirmative vote by, next July 1 or something, we would be on the most aggressive, most beneficial tax incentives. But he shared with us 3 different scenarios, if you were to come in at different times that are available through the state. So I think it did cloud the focus of the conversation. I think my biggest concern with it, and I think we'll be going back to this gentleman or doing our own modeling, the model presumed the incentives, but did not, because we couldn't know what the increases would be, he didn't assume any increases in budget year over year. So you can't just assume tax incentives and not assume budget increases. So there would be, and there are some efficiencies anticipated, but that 700,000 or 800,000 is more likely to phase in over a few years. And the assumption was that it appeared all in the first year. So there were some flaws in the assumptions that a number of us more familiar in looking at budgets picked up on. And I don't think it was an intent to cloud the picture. It was just trying to make it the most basic, simple assumptions you could possibly make. And it is a real goal of mine that this work be viewed as credible. And if we are only assuming the positive impact and we are not taking the reality that as we could best anticipate it into consideration, immediately to me that would seem not credible. And so I'm not exactly sure how they'll choose to approach the next set of assumptions that we want to see modeled. I'm thinking Brian O'Regan, the facilitator, and Brendan Kinney are probably trying to think about that along with the business managers and Mark, because there's a cost to the consultant to run different models. But again, this set of models, I wouldn't want to feel responsible for saying this is what we based our information on.
You'll see some things tomorrow night that have been created that I think are going to be more instructive.
Yeah. So we'll really look forward to that. It was a good conversation. There was a bit of rehashing around the communication work that's happening that thankfully was brought to a close by the reminder that we've got folks willing to help us, and we've got representation from that Red Committee, and so let's let folks get going on the work of doing our best to engage or inform, and to do so likely through a survey. And so I think that we are fortunate to have the support of the folks, Cashel being among them, working on this communication task force. And I think that we'll see, I saw that Liz had sent me the most recent draft of a survey, I think take as much jargon out of it, put as few questions into it, get as much response as we can, so we at least can know better than just the 20 voices sitting around the table, or what even though we are representing our communities, anything that we get otherwise or more is more than the 20 voices sitting around the table. So I think the majority, even though a couple seemed a little bit resistant to it, the majority at the table wants to continue to support the efforts of the folks who are supporting us. And I don't know if I put it up. If I didn't, I meant to. I am doing sort of the big 3 takeaways from these meetings, I send a few bullets to Brendan, he takes a look at them, and then what we're trying to figure out is how we can then let that language have a clear distribution network, so that I don't forget to put it on Facebook, or, we might be doing it there, who else is putting it where, how do we try and get the condensed information out with the link for people to go to the website if they want more information. And that's, I had done that last time around, and I then did remember to put it on Facebook, but I don't think I remembered to put this one on. So I wrote it, but it's nowhere, so I will do that. It really doesn't matter if you write stuff and you don't put it someplace. So Brendan approved it, and I think that next step was, how do we make sure this is getting out to everybody? And then I don't think we revisited that, so maybe you guys have, and hopefully there's sort of a way that we don't forget things like I did.
Yeah. So I don't believe it's been revisited just yet.
Okay. Those are the 2 big topics at the last meeting. It sounds like we're going to revisit some stuff coming up tomorrow.
Articles have been drafted.
Oh, good.
I think they went out tonight.
Oh, good. Okay. That I saw Bendicky email too. So it's moving along, and there's a positive sentiment about what this could possibly do for kids. And I think that we need to make sure that the financial information doesn't overstate the benefit, and represents as close to reality as we could anticipate. I don't think there's anybody sitting around the table who thinks it's worse, but I think there are things that each of us value about the work that's happening that we want to make sure become part of something that would be bigger. And how do you keep something that's bigger accountable to what we just had the opportunity to be a part of this evening? And so it's good work. It chugs along. Because Rachel, you were able to come to the last?
For most
part
of it.
Yeah. So anything that you guys... Yeah, that's good stuff. Brendan's doing a good job leading. All right,
I make the motion, we go into executive session.
for the purposes of.
For the purposes, oh, I'm sorry, I know how to say that. EEA contract negotiations update.
I'll second. Oh, I guess we gotta have a picture.
Oh, wait, executive session for a picture.
I didn't do my hair.
I didn't make the motion, so he can't take the picture. That wasn't part of the motion.
It'll be quick.
All right, so anybody want to second the executive session?
Different picture
Rachel
at
did.
our
I-
We could do it at the